This is Chapter 2, Lesson 5. Our content targets students will understand that percents, decimals, and fractions can be compared and ordered. Our language targets students will demonstrate their understanding of percents by comparing and ordering them with fractions, decimals, and percents. So for our first example, it says fill in each circle with a less than, greater than, or equal to sign to make it a true statement. So when I look at two fractions, such as 5/8 and 7/12, I'm going to use the butterfly method to compare these two fractions. I'm going to what's called cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply the opposite denominator times the opposite numerator. So 8 times 7 is 56. I'm going to multiply 6 times 5 and write that above the opposite numerator, which is 60. Then I can compare these two numbers up top. What do I know about 56 and 60? Well, I know that 60 is greater than 56. So with that being said, I know that 5/8 is greater than 7/12. All I have to do is cross multiply. If I look at my got it problems, I'm going to do the same thing. I have two fractions. Each fraction I'm going to cross multiply. So I have 2/3 and 4/9. And I'm going to cross multiply those. Opposite denominator times the opposite numerator. 3 times 4 is 12. 9 times 2 is 18. I know that 18 is larger than 12, so 2/3 is greater than 4/12. I look at 5/12 and 7/8. 5/12, 7/8. And again, I'm going to cross multiply and divide. Opposite denominator times opposite numerator. 12 times 7 is 84. 8 times 5 is 40. I know 40 is smaller than 84, so 5/12 is less than 7/8. And the last one, 1/6 times 5/18. Going to multiply again. Opposite denominator times opposite numerator. 6 times 5 is 30. 18 times 1 is 18. And 18 is smaller than 30, so 1/6 is less than 30. What you're doing here is you're actually finding the least common multiple of both 6 and 18. So when it comes to ordering fractions, the easiest thing to do is to change each fraction into a decimal and then compare. So when I look at my fractions up above, I have 1/2, 9/14, 3/4, and 5/7. So I'm going to change each of those to a decimal before I compare. So by changing these into a decimal, I would take my calculator and I would divide. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. 9 divided by 14. Now here's a very long number, but I'm only going to write the first two. So I'm going to go 0.64. 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. And the last one is 5 divided by 7. And again, I'm going to take just the first two numbers, which is 0.71. So now, after I have these in order, I have them all in decimals, how do I have to put those in order? So here I have to go from least to greatest, smallest to largest. And as I do this, I'm going to rewrite them back as a fraction. So the smallest number, since this one only has one digit and the rest have two, I can add a 0 and it does not change my value. So the smallest number I have is 50. 50 belongs to 1/2, so that 1/2 would be my smallest. So of the next ones, 64 is smaller than 71 and 75, so 9/14 would be the next one. 75 and 71, well 71 is smaller than 75, so 5/7, and then it would be 3/4. Change them to a decimal, and then as you write your answer from least to greatest, put them back into fractional order. So here's my got it problem. Again, I have 1/2, 5/6, 2/3, and 3/5. So I'm going to change each of these to a decimal. So as I change them to a decimal, the last one I had was 50%, or 1/2 is 0.50. 5/6 is a little bit different, so I'm going to take my calculator and go 5 divided by 6, and that's 8.3333 repeating. So I'm just going to write down the first two numbers, which is 8, 3, 2/3. 2 divided by 3 is 66666 repeating. So I'm just going to take the first two numbers, which is 66. And 3/5, 3 divided by 5 is 0.6. But again, look at all my numbers. I have two numbers, so I'm going to add a 0, and that does not change the value. So then I look back up here. It says least to greatest again. So I have least to greatest, smallest to largest. So as I look at my numbers, 50 is the smallest number, so that would be 1/2. Of the next three, 60 is smaller than both of those, so that would be 3/5. 66 is less than 83, so that would be 2/3. And 5/6 is at the end. So always change your fractions to a decimal when you put your fractions in order. Then rewrite them for your answer back as a fraction. When it comes to comparing fractions and decimals, or fractions to percents, or percents to decimals, it is still easier to change both to a decimal to compare. So here I have 3/4 to 0.7. So I need to change 3/4 to a decimal. So again, if I use my calculator, I go 3 divided by 4. That gives me my decimal of 0.75. Here I have 0.7. There's only one number here, so I can add a 0 to make it have two numbers like those. And now I can compare 75 and 70. Well, I know 70 is smaller than 75. So 3/4. Sorry, wrong way. I know 3/4 is greater than 7/10. Here on example 4, it says Lucida made 85% of her free throws. Henry made 7/8 of his free throws. Who has a better average? So again, 85%, 7/8. So to change a percent to a decimal, as we had before, we take away our percent sign and we move our decimal 2 places back to the left. So our decimal here is 0.85. 7/8, I take 7 divided by 8, and I get 0.875. And now to compare those two, again, if I look at the first two numbers, 85, 87, I see that 85 is less than 87. So 85% is less than 7/8. So here in I've got a problem. So I'm going to do 2, and I'm going to leave you to do 2. So I'm going to do letter E first. Is 2/3 and 0.6. We have to change 2/3 to a decimal. So again, I would go 2 divided by 3. Again, I get 666,666. So I take the first two numbers. Here, there's two numbers, but there's only one here. So if I add a 0, now I can compare 66 and 60. I know that 66 is larger than 60. So the alligator eats the larger fraction. So 2/3 is greater than 6/10. If I do letter F, 0.7 and 8/11, again, my decimal is already here. So I need to change 8/11. So I go 8 divided by 11. Oops, 8 divided by 11. And I get 0.727272. So again, this number has two decimals. This one only has one, so I can add a 0. So it has 2. Now we can compare 70 and 72. Well, I know 70 is smaller than 72, so 7/10 is less than 8/10. So at this time, please pause your video so that you can try the next two problems, H and I. On letter H, we have 42% and 0.44. We're already in our decimal over here. So here I want to change my percent to a decimal. So I take away my percent sign. I move my decimal over 2 places. So I have 0.42 and 44. 42 is less than 44. Sorry. So again, 42% is less than 44 hundredths. In letter I, 7% and 7/10. 7%, I lose the percent sign. I move my decimal 2 places back, fill in any potholes I have. So I have 0.07. 7/10. I take 7 divided by 10. I get 0.7. This number has two numbers, so I have to add a 0 here. 7 is less than 70, so 7% is less than 7/10.